Story 16. Under the cloak of night, beneath a canopy of twinkling stars, I stumbled into a surreal landscape reminiscent of a ghastly dream, a traveling circus, eerily lit by flickering torches that cast long, sinister shadows across the deserted grounds. A cold breeze cut through the night, mingling the smells of sawdust and sweat with an undercurrent of looming dread. Navigating the labyrinth of tents, a crushing unease settled over me, as if a heavy cloak had been draped upon my shoulders. The air was charged with a peculiar tension, suggesting that the very essence of reality might have been distorted within this grim carnival's borders. With each step, my footsteps echoed in the solitude, sharply contrasting with the oppressive silence that hung over the desolate site. The tents, once vibrant and inviting, now bore the marks of neglect and decay, their cheerful exteriors faded into a disturbing tableau of decay. However, it wasn't merely the decrepit state of the circus that sent chills down my spine, it was the inhabitants themselves. Peeking inside the first tent, my heart recoiled at the appalling sight before me. The performers were grotesque parodies of humanity, their bodies twisted into unnatural shapes, writhing in the dim light like nightmarish puppets. Their faces, distorted into expressions of pain and despair, were hauntingly poignant. Their limbs were grotesquely elongated, bending in impossible angles that defied nature. Despite their monstrous forms, the raw anguish in their eyes spoke of a very human suffering, silently begging for release from their perpetual torment. As I ventured deeper, moving from one ghastly exhibit to the next, the carnival revealed horrors that escalated in their macabre intensity. Shadowy figures lurked just out of sight, their eyes glinting with a predatory gleam as they tracked my movements. The air grew thicker with the stench of decay, intermingling bizarrely with the carnival sense of cotton candy and caramel popcorn. Despite the terror that gripped me, a morbid fascination propelled me forward. I had encountered a spectacle that defied understanding, a carnival forged from the darkest corners of imagination, a physical manifestation of nightmares. Finally, I arrived at the heart of this dark gathering, facing a massive tent shrouded in impenetrable darkness. The atmosphere was heavy, laden with a sense of imminent revelation, as if stepping inside might alter reality itself. With a mixture of fear and compulsion, I pushed open the canvas flap and entered. Inside, I was met with a scene that surpassed all prior horror. The tent was illuminated by an otherworldly light that threw grotesque shadows across the distorted bodies of performers. Their agonized screams and cries melded into a harrowing chorus that seemed to penetrate my very soul. In the midst of this chaos, a singular figure captured my attention, a woman cloaked in shadows, her eyes alight with a fierce, unnatural fire. She moved through the pandemonium with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying, her presence commanding and enigmatic. As I watched, transfixed, it dawned on me that this was no mere sideshow, but a purgatory for tormented spirits, each condemned to relive their anguish in perpetual repetition. This revelation washed over me with the chilling clarity that I, too, had been ensnared by this malevolent spectacle. Trapped within the confines of this cursed carnival, I was destined to wander its shadowy paths, a prisoner of its dark whims. The realization was paralyzing, and as I stood there, the central figure approached me, her gaze piercing through the chaos. In her eyes, I saw the depths of sorrow and madness that this carnival harbored, each performer bound to her by unseen chains. Her approach was slow and deliberate, each step measured and haunting, as if she was the puppeteer and the entire carnival her stage. The closer she got, the more I felt the oppressive energy of the place intensifying, as though her presence was the linchpin holding the nightmarish reality together. She stopped just before me, the light in her eyes casting my shadow long and twisted behind me. "You understand now," she whispered, her voice a melodic contrast to the cacophony around us. This is the nature of our curse, and yours too. To see the horrors, to understand them, and to be unable to leave. Her words echoed in my mind, a confirmation of the grim fate I had sensed upon entering. With her declaration, the last threads of hope dissipated. I knew then that escape was an illusion, and that my curiosity had led me to an eternal captivity among the lost souls of the circus. As the realization settled in, the woman turned and melted back into the chaos, leaving me to confront my new reality. The circus continued around me, a never-ending spectacle of despair and madness, and I, now a part of its grotesque ensemble, faded into the role ordained for me by the dark heart of the carnival. Story 17. The forest loomed dense and foreboding, its tangled underbrush casting elongated shadows that swayed in the dimming light of dusk. Driven by an unrelenting curiosity, I had ventured far into its depths, disregarding the subtle warnings that whispered at the fringes of my consciousness. As I maneuvered through the thick brush, a clearing suddenly unfolded before me, softly illuminated by moonlight that slipped through the overhead canopy. At the heart of this natural amphitheater lay an ancient graveyard, its tombstones rising from the earth like silent sentinels, their surfaces etched by the relentless passage of time. The air was rich with the scent of damp soil and decomposing leaves, poignant reminders of the ceaseless cycle of life and death that governed this secluded haven. With a reverent step, I entered the graveyard, my movements hushed by the carpet of fallen leaves. Each gravestone told its own silent tale, etching memories and bygone lives into the stone fabric of time. However, as I wandered among the graves, an eerie sensation took hold, a feeling as though the very earth beneath my feet pulsated with a hidden life force. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration, but enough to send shivers coursing through me. I paused, heart pounding with a mix of fear and fascination, as I surveyed the hauntingly serene landscape. There was an undeniably unnatural element at play here, a mystery that eluded logical explanation. Then, suddenly, the ground beneath me quivered, sending me staggering back in alarm. Falling to my knees, I watched in horror as the soil in front of one grave began to stir. A ghastly, pale face emerged, its features twisted in a silent scream of anguish. I recoiled, scrambling backward as the full form of a corpse writhed free from its earthen tomb, propelled by some inexplicable force. The empty sockets of its eyes seemed to fixate on me with a chilling, otherworldly hunger. In a blind panic, I witnessed the corpse stagger upright, its movements stiff yet driven by a terrifying determination. Its skeletal hands reached toward me, grasping at the air with a strength that seemed impossible given its decayed state. Overcome by fear, I screamed into the stillness of the night. The sound echoed through the graveyard, a lonely signal of distress in the face of unspeakable horror. There was no one to help, no one to hear my cries as I faced the abomination before me. Fueled by pure instinct, I managed to break away from the terrifying grasp of the corpse and fled back into the safety of the forest's dense cover. Behind me, a ghastly laughter echoed, a sound that mocked my terror as I rushed through the underbrush, my heart slamming against my ribcage. I ran until the forest spilled me out into the clarity of the moonlit night. As I paused, gasping for breath, the night air felt like a cold but comforting embrace compared to the suffocating dread of the graveyard. My mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. What had I encountered? Was it a ghost, a demon, or something even more sinister? I knew I could not face that horror again alone. Instead, I decided to seek the knowledge of those familiar with the supernatural, a sage or perhaps a witch who could offer insight and assistance. Guided by the moon's silvery glow, I navigated the labyrinthine paths that bordered the forest, each step driven by a desperate need for answers. The village nearby was home to an old wise woman, known for her understanding of the arcane and mystical. Eventually, I reached her cottage, its windows flickering with candlelight. With trembling hands, I knocked on her door, my heart heavy with the night's terrors. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the aged figure of the crone, her eyes piercing in the dim light. "What troubles you so, to bring you to my door at this unholy hour?" she inquired, her voice a blend of curiosity and concern. I recounted my terrifying ordeal, each detail pouring out in a frantic torrent. She listened intently, nodding occasionally as if confirming her suspicions about my tale. "You have disturbed a restless spirit," she finally declared, her tone solemn. "Such spirits linger where they perished, often due to violent or sudden ends. But fear not, there is a way to appease the spirit and restore peace." She instructed me on a ritual that would quell the disturbed soul, providing me with the necessary herbs and incantations. Grateful yet anxious, I returned to the haunted graveyard, armed now with the knowledge to confront the specter. Under the crone's guidance, I performed the ritual meticulously. As I chanted the final incantation, the air around the graveyard seemed to calm, and a gentle breeze whispered through the trees. The spirit, appeased at last, receded into the ground, leaving behind a tranquil silence. Relief washed over me as I realized the success of the ritual. Though the memory of that night would forever haunt me, I found solace in having faced such profound fear and having emerged with newfound courage and respect for the mysteries of life and death. Story 18. In the stillness of the night, while the rest of the world was lost in dreams, I found myself irresistibly drawn to a mysterious place known as the Ghastly Gallery. Located on a deserted street corner, its presence was barely hinted at by the faint, flickering light that seeped through its windows, the building itself cloaked in deep shadows. Driven by a mixture of apprehension and allure, I pushed open the heavy oak door and crossed the threshold into the dimly lit foyer. The air inside was laden with the scent of aged wood and long undisturbed dust, and a chilling breeze seemed to whisper secrets as it wound its way through the corridors. My heart raced as I ventured deeper into the gallery, where dim lights cast a gloomy glow on the walls adorned with twisted, haunting paintings. Each piece seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own, the macabre imagery drawing me into a world of darkness and sorrow. The artwork was no mere collection, it was a series of portals into realms of despair. The brushstrokes captured visions of nightmares, each scene depicting horror and torment that made my skin crawl. Faces twisted in eternal agony peered out from the canvases, their eyes pleading silently for release from their painted prisons. As I moved through the gallery, the feeling of being surveilled grew stronger. It felt as though unseen eyes tracked my every move, their gaze almost tangible against my skin. The atmosphere thickened with unease, the walls themselves seemingly inching closer, as if intent on engulfing me. Despite the overwhelming dread that filled the air, the haunting images held me captive. Each painting ensnared a piece of my soul, pulling me deeper into their abyss with each moment I lingered. Compelled by a mysterious force, I found myself drawn to a particularly chilling piece, a portrait of a figure shrouded in shadows, their eyes aglow like embers in the darkness. Staring into those fiery eyes, a cold dread gripped me, a sensation of being drawn into the depths of the painting itself. With hands trembling, I reached out and touched the canvas. The rough texture of the dried paint sent a shiver through me. In that instant, the gallery around me seemed to dissolve, the world blurring into obscurity, until I stood alone in a bleak, forsaken landscape. I was no longer within the confines of the gallery, but had become part of the desolate world within the painting, a realm where nightmares prowled freely under a sky heavy with despair. The air reeked of decay, overwhelming me with a wave of dread. Yet, in this world of shadow, a faint light flickered in the distance, promising salvation. With resolve igniting within me, I began my journey towards that distant beacon, determined to uncover the secrets of this ghastly realm. As I ventured deeper, the terrain grew more treacherous, and I encountered beings of such horrific aspect they could only have sprung from the most depraved corners of imagination. These creatures eyed me with malice, their bodies twisted into grotesque forms that defied natural law. Despite the terror that clawed at my mind, a fierce determination propelled me forward. I knew that somewhere in this nightmare landscape lay the key to my escape, a means to return to the reality I had unwittingly left behind. Each step took immense effort as I navigated through the hostile environment, constantly on alert for the next horror that might emerge from the darkness. The path was fraught with challenges, each more daunting than the last, but the flickering light ahead offered a glimmer of hope, urging me to press on. Eventually, I reached the source of the light, a lone lantern hanging over an ancient, weathered book resting on a pedestal. With a mix of awe and desperation, I approached the artifact, realizing it held the answers I sought. The book was a compendium of the gallery's cursed paintings, each page a gateway back to the physical world. Summoning the last of my strength, I opened the book to a page depicting the very gallery I had left behind. As I touched the image, the dark world around me began to fade, and I felt myself being pulled back through the veil separating the realms. With a gasping breath, I found myself back in the ghastly gallery, the oppressive presence of the paintings now a mere memory. Though I was physically unharmed, the journey through the painting had left indelible marks upon my psyche. I left the gallery swiftly, the door closing behind me with a resonant thud that seemed to echo the finality of my escape. As I stepped back into the quiet of the night, the chill of the gallery's air still clinging to my skin, I knew my life had changed forever. The ghastly gallery had shown me depths of fear and despair I had never known, but it had also revealed a strength within me that I had not known I possessed.